All right, Jesse, I think we're ready to kick things off.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Thanks, Don. This is Jesse Heller, the Marketing Director at Fade Business Systems Group. I am excited to introduce Don Farber from VineyardSoft. He's going to be presenting us today about Sage Alerts and workflows. We're really excited to have him here. So Don, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Jesse.
All right, so just real quick, I'm going to run through a quick intro about Fade Business Systems Group and let you all know that throughout today's presentation, if you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the chat box, and I'll be monitoring those, and I can feed those over to Don throughout today's presentation. But if you're not aware, Fade Business Systems Group, we're a Sage authorized partner. We are, we're deeply experienced in Sage 100. And we're also pretty well known in the Sage and community as being the ERP, CRM guys. We've built an integration that's pretty popular between Sage 100 and Sugar CRM that we've got a lot of our clients on. We currently have around 500 clients and about 25 years of experience in the ERP and accounting software space and the CRM space. We're based in Los Angeles, and yeah, that's pretty much who we are. Just by way of showing you kind of what I was talking about, these are some of the product integrations that we've built for Sugar CRM. You can see our Sage 100 integration there. And we've also built all of these other integrations that connect the two software packages between them and Sugar CRM. So if you have any questions about those, feel free to jump on our website or shoot me an email if you're considering connecting your programs. I can tell you about how that works. So with that, Don, why don't you take it away?
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jesse. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us today. My name's Don Farber. I'm with VineyardSoft Corporation. And we're going to start out by talking about some aspects of your business. And I'd actually like to begin by asking you to ask yourself the following question. When was the last time in your everyday business activities you felt like saying, if only we had known? If only we had known about this particular customer who is so far past due, we would have done something about it. If only we had known that we had these leases or contracts that were coming up for renewal, we wouldn't be in the situation of having a piece of equipment that no longer has a valid service contract on it. If only we had known about certain customers of ours who buy from us month after month after month, and now all of a sudden 30 days have gone by and we haven't heard from that customer. We could have reached out to them. We could have saved that business. Well, it is this concept of if only we had known that gave rise to the solution we call Sage Alerts and Workflow. If you take a look at the current slide on the left-hand side, you can see that currently the way a lot of organizations do business is that you rely upon your analytical reports, your analyses, your queries to look at your Sage ERP data, find out what's going on, determine what requires your attention, and do something about it. But in fact, that's a little bit backwards, because instead what we really want to do is we want to make your Sage ERP solution, and thus your organization, data-driven. We want to invest Sage 100 with the ability to automatically monitor itself, to look for conditions of data, business activities that require your attention, to have that information automatically communicated to your staff, and even to have the appropriate response actions taken automatically in response to those business conditions. So let's talk a little bit about this, the background of this solution called Sage Alerts and Workflow. It's actually officially classified as what's called a Business Activity Monitoring, or BAM, solution, as if this industry of ours needs yet another acronym. Well, here you go. That's actually a subheading under Business Intelligence. This is a solution that was created and developed by my organization, VineyardSoft. It is sold through a number of other companies, including Sage Software, under the name Sage Alerts and Workflow. There are just over 12,000 organizations worldwide using Sage Alerts and Workflow, which make it the most widely used solution of its kind on the market today. And there's one more number I'd like to bring your attention to. Notice the number of incoming support requests we get per day. We handle all first-line support on this product. Over 12,000 customers worldwide, and yet our support staff takes fewer than 9 incoming support tickets or calls a day. And what that should say to you is that this is a technology that's not going to make constant demands on your IT department. This is a set it and forget it type of technology. I like to use the analogy of a smoke detector for your business data. You know, you wouldn't live in a house today without smoke detectors. You shouldn't operate your business today without some kind of smoke detector-like technology to watch over your business data. And down at the lower part of the slide, we have some awards and commendations that we've received over the years, which I'm not going to bore you with. But let's go back to those scenarios from a couple of slides ago. And now you can see in red how it is that alerts and workflow can automatically respond to these conditions when they occur. If a customer has overdue invoices, let's have alerts and workflow notify your salesperson. Let's have alerts and workflow automatically resend that customer copies of their overdue invoices. Maybe we even want to have alerts and workflow put that client on credit hold within Sage 100 so no additional orders are allowed to be processed for them. And that's why we don't call the product just Sage Alerts. We call it Sage Alerts and Workflow because it's very important that the application can take some action in response to business conditions occurring. One of my favorite examples is that of using alerts and workflow to identify clients who have stopped buying from you, to automatically notify the appropriate people, and maybe even set up a scheduled phone call in a CRM application for the appropriate account manager or sales rep to make to that client who has stopped ordering. So let me take you now through the components of Sage Alerts and Workflow. It starts out by monitoring your Sage 100 application for any business conditions that are important to you. Now you can see on our slide, we've identified 8 different types of conditions that it can monitor for. Everything from dates that are upcoming, an invoice's due date, a ship date, an expiration date, inactivity monitoring, thresholds that are being approached, data integrity or inconsistencies, or even automated trend analysis. We'll touch upon some of these in a little bit more detail a little later on. Out of the box, it's worth noting that Alerts and Workflow ships with roughly 85, that's 85 pre-configured business conditions that it can monitor for within Sage 100. All of the conditions that you see on this slide, but a whole bunch more on top of that. And please note, when I talk about monitoring Sage 100, I'm talking about monitoring all data everywhere in Sage 100, AR, AP, inventory, GL, line of bill of materials, etc. Also, if you have multiple companies within Sage 100, not a problem. Alerts and Workflow will monitor all the data in all your companies across Sage 100. But it's worth noting, just as Jesse was talking about earlier, how his organization works with more than just Sage 100, and in fact more than just ERP applications, to CRM applications as well. Well, Alerts and Workflow, likewise, can monitor data in those other applications as well. Do you have a sales or CRM app, customer service app, human resources app? Alerts and Workflow can monitor and respond to conditions in all of those business applications on top of Sage 100. And here we've got just a representative sampling of some of the other applications, ERP, CRM, HR, etc., that Alerts and Workflow has been used with. Is this an exhaustive list? By no means. This is just a sampling of some of the other applications that Alerts and Workflow has been used with. Now let me go through the rest of the components of Alerts and Workflow. An optional component is the ability for Alerts and Workflow to monitor the content of incoming email messages. Does your organization have generic email accounts like info@ sales@ or support@yourcompany.com? If so, whose job is it to watch over, to monitor, to respond to those incoming emails? Or, as is too often the case, are those generic email accounts black holes where emails go to die? Alerts and Workflow can automatically monitor those accounts, can automatically respond to those emails, and even take content from those emails and update information in your ERP or CRM databases. And since virtually no business today operates on just one application, but rather you have multiple apps, ERP, CRM, HR, it's important to note that alerts and workflow can monitor conditions between your applications. Jesse also talked about integrating ERP and CRM. Well, how useful would it be if, when a new sales opportunity is entered in a CRM system, and alerts and workflow saw that, could check the client's corresponding AR balance over in the ERP system, see if that customer has any overdue invoices, see if that new opportunity in CRM would put the customer over their credit limit based upon their balance in ERP, and once again, notify the account manager, cross-application monitoring. Also, alerts and workflow can even monitor your operating system. It can tell you when someone's running low on disk space on a certain server, when a user has let their Outlook email box fill up, or conditions like those. And very importantly, and unique to alerts and workflow, is a module we call alert acknowledgments. You know, I always like to say it's really good to send an alert. It's even better to know that that alert has been successfully delivered, read, and acknowledged. And alerts and workflow enables that through this module of alert acknowledgments that comes with the product at no additional cost. So now let's talk about how alerts and workflow can respond to those critical business conditions. First and foremost, as you'd imagine, sending alerts. Email, most certainly, the most common alert delivery method, although text messaging to a cell phone is a rapidly upcoming number 2. We often get asked what email systems does alerts and workflow support. Easy answer, all of them. Microsoft Outlook or Exchange-based email, hosted email like Outlook 365, Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo Mail, SMTP Mail, all supported. But that's just one of alert and workflow's delivery methods. You can see the others listed on the current slide. And I've highlighted 2 of them in red. One of them, charts and graphs. You know, sometimes it really is true that a picture is worth 1,000 words. If alerts and workflow is going to send out an alert message to say, hey, this customer has changed their buying habits, what would be really nice to see would be perhaps a nice line chart that shows how much this customer has been purchasing from you over the last 6, 9, or 12 months. So you know not just that they've changed, but how great a change has been made. And dashboard alerts. I talked about email being the #1 alert delivery method, and email is good, but you know, all of us already receive too much email every day. We have to wade through spam to get at the real meat of our messages. Well, alerts and workflow can automatically post alert details to dynamic web pages. We call them web dashboards. So that if someone in accounting wants a web page up that just shows all invoices that are overdue or coming due this week, if someone down in shipping wants a window up that shows all orders that are due to ship today, all orders that are currently on back order, etc., those can also be posted to these dynamic web pages via alerts and workflow. And when we talk about alerts, sometimes a simple, short little email or text message isn't sufficient. If a customer has overdue invoices, let's have alerts and workflow regenerate those invoices and send it to them. If an item in inventory is approaching its reorder level, let's have alerts and workflow automatically generate our stock status report for that item and deliver it to someone perhaps in purchasing. All of your existing Crystal reports, as well as other forms and documents, can be generated and delivered by alerts and workflow. And that actually resolves itself into 5 different capabilities. Scheduled reports, whether it's a daily receivables report, aged receivables, hourly stock status report, all of your scheduled reports can be generated and delivered by alerts and workflow. But personally, I think even more interesting is #2 on the current slide, triggered reports. If and when a client becomes more than 90 days past due, maybe with an open AR balance of greater than $5,000, then I want alerts and workflow to generate my AR aging report for that client and deliver that report to that client's sales rep. But all of your forms and documents, invoices, statements, picking lists, dunning notices, purchase orders, they can all be generated and delivered by alerts and workflow. We've talked about graphic alerts, charts, and graphs, but also #5 on the list, on-demand reporting. How cool would it be if one of your users who doesn't have access to Crystal reports could send an email message to Alerts and Workflow, and in that email could say, hey, Alerts and Workflow, will you please generate for me my AR aging report for customer ABC? And that email gets received by Alerts and Workflow. It checks to see that the requester is authorized to get that report. Alerts and Workflow then automatically generates it and automatically emails the requested report back to that person. And finally, if you happen to also be using other reporting tools like Sage Intelligence as just one example, Alerts and Workflow can generate and deliver reports and analyses from those tools as well. Which brings us to the final component of Alerts and Workflow, which really is that workflow component. And by that, what I mean is the ability for Alerts and Workflow to go back into Sage 100 or into your CRM applications and actually add or update data where required. If a client has overdue invoices, we might want Alerts and Workflow, in addition to resending those invoices, in addition to notifying the sales rep, we might want Alerts and Workflow to put that customer on credit hold within Sage 100. If that customer is overdue, we might want Alerts and Workflow to actually schedule the corresponding sales rep with a task in maybe Sage CRM, as an example, to actually call up or email, somehow contact that customer and talk to them about taking care of that overdue balance situation. Now, the methods by which Alerts and Workflow can write data back into a database are varied. There are some wizard-driven tools, there are some programmatic tools, and I do want to mention that if you're looking to use Alerts and Workflow to write data back into Sage 100, such as adding or updating data, that does require an additional component. It requires the Sage Visual Integrator, or VI solution. So, before we take a look at the application, you've now got an idea for basically what it consists of. Let's talk about how it is licensed and priced. Alerts and Workflow is not licensed per user. It doesn't matter how many people you have within your organization, how many Sage 100 user licenses you have, anything like that. Instead, Alerts and Workflow is licensed according to two things. Number one, the number of applications you want it to monitor, and number two, the functionality that you need. Let's start off up at the top of this slide. Let's say that for starters, you want to use Alerts and Workflow to monitor Sage 100. That's one application, and you want to monitor for an unlimited number of conditions: overdue invoices, low stock, customers who've changed their buying habits, overdue purchase orders, etc. Based upon those conditions, you want to send alerts to as many people as you want, folks within your own organization, your suppliers and vendors, your customers and prospects. And you want those alerts to be delivered via all the methods I mentioned, via email, web dashboard, text messaging to a cell phone, even faxing if you're still using that technology. For that combined group of capabilities, you'd be looking at a one-time purchase price of just under $1,800. Again, that's a one-time fee. Added to that would be roughly 20% for annual maintenance and support. And then there are your options. There are just three of them. Number one, the addition of what we call the reports module. This is what gives Alerts and Workflow the ability to generate and deliver reports like Crystal reports, forms and documents like invoices, statements, purchase orders, etc. It also includes the ability to do graphic alerts, bar charts, pie charts, line charts, and the like. All of that capability is in the reports module. That module is a one-time cost of just under $1,000 with roughly 20%, $199 for annual maintenance and support. And then you get the actions module. I tend to call this the workflow actions module, as this is what gives Alerts and Workflow the ability to write data back into a database, to add or update records in Sage 100, in Sage CRM, or within other applications. And that module as well is a one-time cost of just under $1,000 with annual M&S maintenance and support at 20%. Please note that if you opt for both of these modules at your time of initial purchase, you do get a $500 price break. And just to give you an idea of how popular these modules are, about 75 to 80% of our clients opt for the reports module, and between 45 and 50% of our clients opt for the Actions module. By the way, you can always start with just the base product at $17.99 and choose to add those modules later. There is one final option. You might say, yeah, I want to use alerts and workflow to monitor my Sage 100 ERP application, but I've also got this CRM application. I've got Sage CRM, I've got Sugar CRM, or some other CRM app. How much would it be to monitor that application as well? For each additional application to be monitored, it's an additional $17.99. However, once you reach 4 applications being monitored, we automatically grant you what's called the Unlimited Connection License, enabling you to monitor every single business application that you own today or ever will own. A number of years ago, we worked with over 1,100 of our customers to figure out what was the average amount of time it took them to pay off their investment in the Sage Alerts and Workflow solution. We worked with an analyst on this. We created an ROI, return on investment calculator, which is available for your use if you'd like to plug in your own numbers. Turned out that the average payback period was just under 3 months at 88 days. Okay. So you've got a conceptual idea for what this Alerts and Workflow product is. So what I'd like to do now is show it to you. So Sage Alerts and Workflow. Let me start off with a couple of general words about the technology. Number one, it's a server-based application. What that means is that it's typically installed on just one machine within your IT environment. Alerts and Workflow does not need a dedicated server. You could put it on your Sage 100 server, you could put it on your SQL server or Exchange server box, or even for that matter, run it on a workstation, which is what I'm demoing it to you from today. Alerts and Workflow runs under any Windows-based operating system, so that makes that a mercifully brief conversation. And Alerts and Workflow stores its data in a choice of 3 different database formats. Microsoft SQL Server is our preferred and most common database format. However, we also support SQL Server Express, free download from Microsoft. We also support Microsoft Access. And you may wonder, well, why Access? And the answer to that question is to make it easy for you to download and try out Alerts and Workflow without having to bother your IT administrator. The live shipping software is available for free download and trial. It runs for 30 days, and during that time, it stores its data in a collection of Microsoft Access databases. You're welcome to keep running under Access, but our preference is for you to upgrade the database once again to either SQL Server or SQL Express, your choice. So let's take a look at Alerts and Workflow. One of the key aspects of the application is for me to go back to that smoke detector analogy. Alerts and Workflow is not an application that you're going to be going into on a daily basis, because you set up Alerts and Workflow to look for certain business conditions, such as the half a dozen or so AR-related events that I'm showing you now. We'll take a look at one of these in just a few minutes. But once you set up these events, once you tell Alerts and Workflow how often to monitor for those conditions, you quite literally turn Alerts and Workflow on. It runs as a Windows service in a completely lights-out processing environment. You're going to be the recipient of alerts, reports, and other actions that Alerts and Workflow executes automatically, but once again, you're not having to go into or maintain the application on a daily or even weekly basis. Now, just to go back a couple of branches for a moment, you'll see here I've got Alerts and Workflow monitoring a number of different modules within Sage 100. I'm also having Alerts and Workflow monitor data in my CRM application. I happen to be using Sage CRM. I'm monitoring data within a human resources application, and I'm even using Alerts and Workflow to monitor conditions between my ERP and CRM application, in this case Sage 100 and Sage CRM. I mentioned earlier that out of the box, Alerts and Workflow ships with roughly 85 pre-configured business conditions. And here are just some of them. These are just some of the business conditions specific to accounts receivable in Sage 100, looking at customer balances that are coming due, that are past due, that are aged more than X days, looking for changes to a customer's credit limit or credit status. Again, these are just some of what come with Alerts and Workflow. But let's pick on a specific event so I can walk you through its configuration. I'm going to choose this event called invoices that are overdue because sadly, that's a challenge that most businesses have to deal with today, VineyardSoft included, getting customers to pay on time. Now, this is what we refer to as an event, and each event has up to 5 components. The first of those components is showing me whether or not the event is active. Are we currently monitoring for this condition? And if so, how often? Well, if I cursor over this branch, I can see that this event is running every day at 9 o'clock in the morning. If you think about it, different business conditions have different degrees of criticality to them. Overdue invoices, probably checking once a day is sufficient. Monitoring stock levels, perhaps every hour or every half an hour or every 5, 10, or 15 minutes. Each event can have its own frequency. And by the way, you have a lot of control about this. In this event's case, even though it says that I'm checking this event every day at 9 o'clock in the morning, I happen to know that this event is only being checked Monday through Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning. There's no one around to receive an alert on Saturdays or Sundays, there's probably no need to run the event on those days. I can even specify what my organization's holidays are and specify whether or not an event should run on a holiday. You'll also notice with this active branch that right at the end of the description, something called repeat is on. What that means is that when this event ran this morning at 9 a.m. and sent out its alerts about overdue invoices, tomorrow at 9 in the morning, when this event runs again, if some of those same invoices are still unpaid, Alerts and Workflow is going to send another or repeat round of alerts. There are some situations where you need to keep on pestering someone until the situation has been addressed, but there are other situations where just a single alert about a given record is sufficient. Now, this particular event is looking at invoices that are overdue and have a balance in excess of a certain dollar amount. Let's take a look. In this case, that amount is $100. Maybe you want to change that threshold. Let's go in and modify this query. So just double click on that branch. We get taken into our triggering threshold, $100. And maybe we want to change it to $500. Of course, this is all based on authorizations. Only authorized people will have the ability to make modifications like this. But a question that I often get asked is the following. Don, how easy is it for me as a non-technical person to change the criteria in this query? Maybe I need to exclude certain customers from this logic, customers who I know always pay late. Well, instead of trying to describe that to you, let me show it to you. Because in order to create or customize queries, you don't need to be a programmer, you're not writing SQL syntax, but you do need to be familiar with an application's database schema. In plain English, you need to know what data sits where. In the case of an application like Sage 100, Alerts and Workflow automatically present you with a list of all of the files or tables in a database. And you're able to pick and choose what files or tables you want to retrieve data from. Alerts and Workflow has a wizard to guide you through this process for linking or joining the tables to each other. And I'm going to stop next on the Columns or Fields tab. This is where Alerts and Workflow shows you a list of all the fields of data related to this condition. So you can see we've got fields like an invoice number, its date, its due date, who the salesperson is, the invoice balance, etc. You want to get a little bit more sophisticated? Maybe we want to total up all of the past due invoices for a customer. Easy enough. We can just choose one of these aggregate functions. Maybe we want to calculate the number of days past due that an invoice is. Alerts and Workflow provides a calculation wizard. Once again, you're not writing any kind of programming code here. You can simply scroll down, look for the calculation you wish to perform, such as the difference in days between two dates, and Alerts and Workflow will walk you through the creation of that calculation. I'm going to skip ahead a couple more tabs to our filters, or the conditions that we want to look for. This particular query has 2. We're looking for all invoices where the balance is greater than a certain dollar amount. Everything here is available in plain English format from drop-down lists. Once again, no programming necessary. This particular query has 2 conditions. We want to make sure that the invoice balance is greater than X, but we also want to make sure that the invoice is past due. And so if we take a look at our second filter here, we can see that we're looking at the invoice's due date and we're specifying that that due date must be less than the current date, indicating that in fact the invoice is past due. By the way, one of the, I think, cool capabilities of alerts and workflow is its ability to tell you whenever someone has changed the value of any field in a database. So for example, if I'm running into a problem where people are changing an invoice's due date, people shouldn't do that. I can have alerts and workflow automatically begin auditing the value in that field so that it'll capture both the old and new value whenever that field is changed. Now, just in case we have anyone technical on the phone with us today and you're wondering, well, I wonder what alerts and workflow is doing behind the scenes of this query. We'll show you. You can actually click on the SQL tab and we'll show you the lovely SQL syntax, the programming code that sits behind this query. Why am I showing this to you? Because this is what you don't have to know what to do. Alerts and workflow is automatically generating this lovely SQL syntax based upon all the selections that you made in the preceding tabs, and we can even check to make sure it's going to execute correctly by previewing the query. Let's look at all invoices that are past due with a balance of greater than $500, and here's our list. We can look at the invoice due date. Yep, all back in 2010. They're not only past due, they're very past due. And the balance as well, all greater than $500. So now let's take a look at how the how the event can respond to this condition when it's found to occur. First and foremost, tell someone about it. I want to send alerts. And as we talked about earlier, the methods are varied: email, text message, web dashboard, etc. You want to modify these alert messages? Well, let's go into one of them and change the message. All of the fields of data that we chose earlier, like the invoice's balance, the customer's name, etc., are all available to us to be put into the alert message. This instant message is going to say invoice number for a particular customer has a balance of, we're going to show the balance amount, and we're going to show its due date. Maybe you want to add the date of the invoice to this alert message as well. So let's say dated, and let's look for our invoice due date field, the invoice date field, and drop that in there, and maybe we'll even put in a comma just to give us correct grammatical syntax. So that's as easy as it gets to modify or configure your alert messages. Now, you can make your alerts much fancier than that. For example, email, although you could make plain text emails, you can also do HTML formatted emails, which of course brings up the question, do you have to know how to write HTML syntax to create HTML formatted documents? Absolutely not. Alerts and Workflow ships with a library of HTML templates to choose from. You just drop in the fields of data you want to appear in those messages. Now, if we move this window down a little bit, you can see that in addition to email and text message and web dashboard, we've also got an invoice form attached to this event. Well, sure, if a customer's got overdue invoices, the most natural thing in the world to do is to have alerts and workflow to regenerate those invoices in the desired format, like PDF or HTML, and automatically re-deliver those documents to the appropriate customers. At the same time, we've also got a chart associated with this event. Let's just take ourselves a quick look at this chart. This is showing me the total overdue balance for my customers summarized by salesperson. Well, that sounds kind of interesting. Let's have a look at that. Let's preview the chart itself. I believe this is a bar chart. Let's see what we get. Overdue invoice total per rep as of today's date, current time. I can see my 4 sales reps, and looks like I need to have a chat with Shelly about getting her past due customers to pay up. So these charts and graphs like these can be embedded within emails. They can be FTP'd to a person. They can be posted to a website, really delivered however you want. So the content of your alerts. The next step then is to specify whom you want those alerts to be delivered to. We refer to them as an event subscribers. And here I've got 4. I'm notifying everyone in our finance group, and I'm notifying them via 3 different alert delivery methods: email and fax and instant message. Like I said, with alerts and workflow, you can really pester the heck out of someone if you put your mind to it. I'm also notifying myself via just 2 alert delivery methods, but note, You've got Sage 100. That already stores your customers and their email addresses and your sales reps and their email addresses. Do you have to enter all those into Alerts and Workflow? Absolutely not. Alerts and Workflow sees those subscribers, that address information, not only out of Sage 100, out of Sage CRM, Sugar CRM, or any other business applications you're using. And if I've got customers with overdue invoices, the two most important people for me to notify are indeed the customer and the customer's sales rep. The final component of an event is its workflow actions. And here, I do need to note that this branch is covered under an additional layer of security, because when it comes to writing data back into a database, you need to be ultra sure that the people who are configuring those actions are technically capable of configuring them. So an additional layer of security for this branch, but this gives you the ability to do things like put an overdue customer in Sage 100 on credit hold, or to take the details of a customer who is on credit hold and maybe update your CRM app like Sage CRM to create a scheduled phone call or some activity in CRM. Maybe you're working with a collections agency, and at the end of every week or at the end of every month, that agency says, hey, can you please send us a comma-separated file of all customers with overdue invoices so that we can institute collections with those customers. So there are a number of different options that you have in this Workflow Actions module. Some of them, as I mentioned earlier, are wizard-driven. Others are more programmatic in nature, including a fully embedded Visual Basic scripting engine within Alerts and Workflow. So that gives you an idea for how the application works. Now let me just finish up my part of our discussion before we open up the lines for Q&A with just a couple of other items. We talked about looking at conditions between ERP and CRM. You know, it's just kind of cool, some of the things you can do here. For example, I'd like to know when an account is taken off of credit hold in ERP, we need to make sure that we notify the corresponding salesperson over in CRM. Or I need to know about a new opportunity over in CRM where the amount of that opportunity, when added to the customer's existing balance in ERP, would put the customer over their credit limit. Once again, all of these are looking at conditions between ERP and CRM. As far as just monitoring CRM is concerned, lots of conditions. Just to give you a few, whether it's looking at the performance of marketing campaigns, customer support cases, sales opportunities. I'll tell you, one of my favorite here is looking at sales opportunities whenever certain opportunities have had key values changed, like the forecast amount, the forecast probability, and the forecast close date of a sales opportunity. And I want to finish up in the application by just taking a moment to talk about automated trend analysis. I'll bet that when you first thought about coming into this webinar, the thought of automated trend analysis was probably not within what you thought might be covered. Take a look at this event. This event runs at the last day of every month, and what it does is it identifies any customers whose sales for the month just ended represents a drop of at least 30% versus that customer's average sales based upon sales activity for the past 6 months. How cool is that? And the reason why Alerts and Workflow can do this is that we allow multiple queries to be used in any one event. I'm going to cut to the chase here. Let's take a look at the alert message that ends up getting generated. Here's the alert message. Subject, end of month, down 30%. So this is an email message that's getting sent to a salesperson, and it's saying, hello, salesperson. This customer of yours has placed orders for the previous month to date that represents a decrease of at least 30% over their average month. And then we're showing for that customer their previous end of month orders, their average monthly orders based upon the preceding 6 months of activity, and then showing the decrease represented both as a dollar amount and as a percentage drop. Just how valuable could that be to a salesperson when they come into the office on the first day of the month and identify their customers who have changed their buying habits? So with that, let me jump back into our PowerPoint and finish up our presentation today and then take any questions that you might have. I do invite you to visit the Alerts and Workflow website. The address, as you can see here, is simply alertsandworkflow.com. From here, you can download additional information about the product. You want to try out the product, you can download the live shipping software right from here, from the Downloads tab. Interested in that return on investment calculator that I mentioned, want to see what those pre-configured 85 alert events are for Sage 100, you can get that information from this website as well. And then just to complete the picture, I mentioned that you can download the software. That software runs for 30 days, starting on the date you first go into the application. If you run into any questions whatsoever, any problems as you're evaluating the software, you have full and free access to our tech support department. The product comes with a downright readable manual. It was written by English majors as opposed to by engineers, which means it's pretty darn readable, if a little bit wordy at times. We also have an online video training library that you have access to. And then the rest of the details on the current slide. The only thing I want to touch upon is a quick comment about our partner here, Fay Business Systems Group. They have been a Alerts and Workflow business partner of ours for many years now. They are not only a partner of ours, they are a certified and authorized partner of ours. What that means is that they have many successful alert and workflow implementations under their belt. It also means that they have completed the certification process to show their capabilities with the alerts and workflow solutions. So that's my somewhat long-winded way of saying you could not be in better hands when it comes to implementing alerts and workflow than with the folks at Fay Business Systems Group. So with that, Jesse, let me turn the proceedings back over to you. I'll ask if any questions have come in during the presentation, and we'll take them now.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, there was one question. Is there, they wanted to know if there was a document or a questionnaire or something of that nature that a person can fill out to help them determine if they need alerts and workflows.
Oh, excellent. That's a very good question. I mentioned the return on investment calculator, but I'm actually going to bounce out of this PowerPoint and bring up a web browser. You know, this is kind of interesting. Since I brought up a web browser, I'm just going to minimize a couple of other windows here. I wanted to show you this is actually an alert that I get out of alerts and workflow. This is a little bit of a dashboard for me showing some key information. But what I really wanted to come here for is to show you, and let me maximize my window here, the Alerts and Workflow website. Because right in the middle of this window, you'll see some text that reads, does your organization need alerts and workflow? Click here to find out. This, Jesse, is directly to answer the question that came in, as this will actually bring you to what's called the Alerts and Workflow Needs Assessment Tool. This is a web-based tool that asks you a series of questions about your business and whether your business engages in certain types of processes. It allows you to answer these questions, and then at the end, it generates a report card. It shows you for the business processes that you've identified as critical to the success of your organization, to what degree can Sage Alerts and Workflow benefit your business? And so that report card not only shows you what components, what capabilities of alerts and workflow do you need, but which components you need the most and which components perhaps you don't need, allowing you to not only identify your need for alerts and workflow, but to identify the type of alerts and workflow license that might be most applicable for your organization. So, Jesse, thank you for that question.
All right, great. Thanks, Don. And we'll make sure to send out this resource when I send out the recording and follow up to everybody once we process that, and we'll get that out. So with that, we've come to the end of our presentation today. Don, thanks so much for taking your time to join us, and everyone as well. Thank you very much for investing a little bit of time to listen to us talk today about Sage Alerts and Workflows from VineyardSoft and Fay Business Systems Group. We thank you very much for attending, and we will talk with you soon. Everyone have a great Thanksgiving holiday, and Don, thanks again.
My pleasure, Jesse. Take care.